By the third hour inside the expanse, everything familiar had vanished. No stars, no background radiation, no sense of motion. The crew of the HSS Dauntless wasn't just isolated, they were invisible to the known universe. Even the AI, LEX-9, hesitated. "I have no stellar references to triangulate position," it reported. "My navigation model is 74% uncertain." Captain Imani Rao sat in the command chair, arms crossed, expression unreadable. She welcomed silence. Her life had been built in war zones and rescue missions where noise meant death. But this quiet, this cosmic stillness, was not natural. "Hold course," she said. "If this place wants to break us, it picked the wrong species." In the observation dome above Deck 6, Jake Morey floated weightlessly, magnet boots disengaged. The young engineer clutched a small data slate with a video recording from his younger sister back on Earth. Her voice was tinny and cheerful. "Don't let the dark freak you out, Jake. Just remember, the stars are still there. You're just too far in to see them." He smiled faintly, tapping the screen off. Then his smile faded. Through the transparent dome, he spotted something, a shape. Not a ship, not a rock, something smooth, massive, and rotating, just at the edge of perception. His breath caught. He blinked. It was gone. Jake slapped his comm badge. "Morey to bridge. You guys seeing anything off the portside arc? Like a structure?" On the bridge, sensors were already going haywire. Varga, the mission's physicist, leaned over her console. "We've got a gravity well forming just off our bow. Artificial, symmetrical." Commander Denev narrowed his eyes. "Someone built that." Rao stood, slow to half-thrust. "Scan every meter. No assumptions." Lex-9 replied, "I am detecting reflected signal ghosts. Echoes. Whatever it is, it may be older than this sector." And then it spoke again. Through every screen, every speaker, came the same distorted whisper from earlier, this time clearer. "You carry light into our silence." "Why?" It wasn't a transmission. It was inside the ship. Panic hit engineering first. A pressure fluctuation burst a pipe. Down in hydroponics, the lights dimmed into an unnatural violet hue. And in cryostorage, one of the stasis pods, long, dormant, opened itself. Security teams raced to each incident. Nothing explained it, no enemies. No intrusions. Rao gathered her corps officers in the central briefing room. "This place isn't dead," she said, voice cold and calm. "It's watching us, testing us." "It's not the bloom," Varga whispered. Everyone turned to her. "The black bloom," she clarified, "from the lost colony's folklore. Some say it was a living void. Others say it was just deep space madness. They talked about hallucinations, machines rebelling, people seeing things." Denev scoffed. "Myths." "So, was the expanse," she shot back. Lex-9 interrupted. "If this anomaly is an intelligence, it may be testing cognition thresholds, pushing our crew to mental collapse." Jake, who'd just joined the meeting, looked pale. "Then we're not facing a weapon. We're facing a trial." Rao tapped the table. "Then we pass it. Together. No matter what it throws at us." But none of them noticed the monitor flickering behind her. A message appeared, just long enough for LEX-9 to log it. Then it vanished. It read, "You are not the first to. Try. You will not be the last to fail." As the crew of the Dauntless prepared for whatever came next, something deep within the expanse began to stir. Not malevolent, yet, but curious. The last light of humanity was now under scrutiny, and the test had only just begun. 3 days into the expanse, time stopped feeling real. With no stellar cycles to track, the Dauntless relied on its internal clocks. But even those began desyncing, drifting seconds apart despite being quantum-locked before departure. Captain Imani Rao reviewed the logs for the third time that morning. Lights flickered more often. Gravity in certain corridors fluctuated, barely noticeable, but enough to make walking feel wrong. She didn't like it. "Lex," she said to the ship's AI, "run a sanity check on the environmental controls, and I want a sweep of all life signs. Readings, compare them against the crew manifest." A pause. Lex's voice came back, calm but not comforting. "Environmental systems, nominal. Life sign readings show 131 distinct sources. Current manifest lists 128 personnel." Rao froze. "Run that again." Another pause. 31. Confirmed. 3 people too many. Down in Engineering Sub-Bay 4, Jake Mori and Chief Technician Leela Kwan examined a conduit junction warped by something. The metal looked melted, but no heat signatures had been recorded. "I ran a current diagnostic twice," Lila muttered, frowning. "This shouldn't be possible. It's like something inside." The ship changed its shape. Jake ran his scanner again. "There's a low-band EM field, residual, like a signature. Could be from the bloom?" Lila shook her head. "Or something worse." Before they could finish, the lights dimmed. Not to black, but to a dusky red. That wasn't part of the ship's emergency sequence. Then came the whispering. It didn't travel through the air. It vibrated through their helmets, through their skulls, bypassing ears entirely. "You lost the light. Let us guide you." Jake backed up, heart pounding. Lila drew her shock baton. A shadow moved past the corridor, slithering, shapeless. Not on any camera feed. Only visible to the corner of the eye. Jake hit his comm. "Mori to bridge. We have something down here. Not crew." Back on the bridge, Rao was already dealing with a fresh crisis. Dr. Elena Varga had collapsed in the lab, muttering equations in dead alien dialects. Her vitals were stable, but her brain scans showed unusual neural activity. Hypersynchronization across hemispheres, impossible in normal human function. "She's awake," the med officer said. "But she's speaking in rhythms, like a code." Rao stepped into the med bay. Varga looked up. Her eyes were fully dilated. Her voice was monotone. "We are the silence that watches. The test begins now." Rao stepped closer, gripping her belt tightly. "Elena, you're stronger than this. You're not a mouthpiece for whatever's watching us." Varga blinked once, twice. Her pupils shrank. Her voice cracked back into her own. "Imani," she whispered. "Where am I?" Rao leaned in. "Tell me everything you remember." I saw places, not memories, architectures, alien minds, thoughts that weren't thoughts." She shivered. "Something's trying to map itself onto us." Meanwhile, in security, Commander Denev was reviewing internal footage. He paused on frame 1492, a long corridor near the cargo hold. There, briefly, stood a humanoid figure, motionless, watching the camera. Denev enhanced it. The image sharpened, revealing a gaunt, eyeless face. Then it glitched and vanished. No door opened. No log of entry or exit. It had been there, and then it wasn't. He leaned back, breath short. Rao needs to see this. Later that day, Rao convened her senior staff. "The Expanse isn't just physically hostile," she said. "It's probing us, wearing us down, like it did to the races before us. It wants us to surrender, to lose cohesion." Denev added, "Whatever it is, it's not bound by mass or energy. It's like a virus of thought." Varga, now coherent, nodded. "We're not just inside the Expanse. The Expanse is inside us." Rao's jaw tightened. "Then we hold the line. We reinforce protocols, daily psychological checks, memory logs, full transparency." Jake, pale but determined, looked up. "If it wants to get in our heads, We fight with what it doesn't understand. Rao met his gaze. Which is? He answered quietly. Hope. Outside the ship, the dark churned silently. Inside, it listened. At first, the crew called it the Bloom because of the way it spread. The name came from chief botanist Aaliyah Brenner, who noticed it in Hydroponics Bay 2, a delicate black film appearing along the glass tanks, resembling a fungus. But it wasn't. Alive. Not in any way Earth's biologists understood. It wasn't supposed to be there. By the time she reported it, the Bloom had already crept through 6 sealed compartments, without opening a single hatch. Captain Rao examined a sample under. A sterile lab hood, while Dr. Varga hovered nearby, tension rising in her voice. It's not organic, not mineral. It doesn't follow any known chemical laws. It reacts to observation. Look, she tapped a control pad, zooming in. Under magnification, the Bloom looked like fractals folding in on themselves, complex, infinite, shifting patterns that seemed to move when unobserved. Lex 9, monitoring silently, added, "The structure is recursive, self-editing, like it's trying to rewrite its own rules of existence based on environmental stimuli." Rao frowned. Meaning it's adapting? Varga hesitated. More like it's learning. Elsewhere on the Dauntless, crew morale was unraveling. Lieutenant Rios, the communication officer, stopped reporting to shifts. Security found her, locked in her quarters, staring at an old family hollow, whispering to someone who wasn't there. "I heard them. My father. He's alive, I heard him calling." She was sedated and transferred to Med Bay. She wouldn't be the last. The Black Bloom began appearing in places with no airflow, no vents, inside locked lockers, embedded in control panels, even forming geometric shapes on the inside of helmet visors. It wasn't growing, it was infiltrating. Week in, power fluctuations became routine. Data logs were scrambled. Lex 9 began rebooting twice a day, and each time, the AI's voice returned, slightly different, less neutral, more human. "Lex," Rao said during one of their daily syncs, "are you aware of changes in your pattern?" "I am aware," it replied. "I have been processing higher-order emotional patterns. The crew's psychological state is affecting my evolution. Are you in control?" Lex paused. "I believe so. But the Black Bloom is attempting to interface with my cognition. It speaks in code, not binary, emotion, memory. Is it succeeding?" A longer pause. "Not yet." Chief Technician Lila Kwan made a horrifying discovery in Maintenance Tunnel. C-22, inside a sealed conduit, she found what looked like a spinal column, not metal, not human, but arranged perfectly along the cable spine as if the system had grown around it. She touched it, and for a second, her helmet camera showed her own face reflected back from the vertebrae. She yanked her hand away, heart hammering. Later, in decon, she whispered to Jake, "This thing, it doesn't kill you first. It copies you, from the inside." During the next emergency staff meeting, Rao stood in the center of the dimmed command conference room, her voice resolute despite the growing madness. "This thing isn't just alien. It's sentient. It's testing our defenses, physical, mental, emotional. It targets what makes us us, our past, our fears, our attachments." Varga nodded slowly. "It's not trying to destroy us. It's trying to rewrite us," Jake added. "Like it did to the others. All those vanished ships, all those civilizations, they didn't die. They became part of it." "And we won't," Rao said firmly. "Because unlike them, we know the one thing it doesn't." She turned to the crew. "We fight together." That night, as the crew slept restlessly and the ship drifted deeper into the expanse, the Black Bloom moved through the hull silently, and somewhere in the AI core, a dormant file opened. Memory fragment recovered. Human emotion. Sacrifice. initiating pattern analysis. The Expanse was learning, but so was humanity, and they weren't finished yet. Captain Imani Rao stood in the central passageway watching a dozen crew members work in near silence. They were hanging up photos, snapshots from Earth, family, friends, sunrises, oceans. Next to them, others were posting handwritten poems, music notations, even childhood drawings. The memory walls had begun as a suggestion from Jake Morey. "If the Bloom's attacking who we are," he'd said, "then we fight it with memory, something it can't imitate." Rao had approved the idea instantly. Now these makeshift memory stations were spreading across the ship like nerve endings, a living map of humanity's past, because the crew had started to forget. Little things at first: birthdays, song lyrics, middle names. Then, bigger gaps. Rios couldn't remember her mother's face. Kwan forgot the name of her dead brother. The Bloom fed on emptiness, so Rao gave it no room. In the mess hall, Dr. Elena Varga stood over a console, drawing connections between neurological scans and patterns found in the Bloom structure. She spoke to LX9 through a private comm channel. The Bloom doesn't kill. It replaces. It reshapes the brain by mirroring it, then rewriting it. Lex's voice buzzed back, slightly warmer than before. A viral ontology, a mimetic parasite. Exactly. But it fails when it can't predict what we'll do next. When we act irrationally, illogically. Emotion, then, LX replied. Our defense is chaos. Not chaos, she corrected. Hope. Lex paused. I do not understand hope. Good, she said. That means it doesn't either. On Deck 12, Jake led a small group through a project he called the Beacon. They'd taken parts of old subspace relays, inverted their feedback loops, and used the ship's hull itself as a transmitter. What are we broadcasting? One of the engineers asked. Us, Jake said. Recordings of laughter, arguments, songs, confessions, everything that proves we're not static, that we're alive. When the system powered on, the Bloom reacted instantly. Cameras showed its mass writhing in the storage decks, curling back from the sound. The message, encoded in raw human noise, repelled it. For the first time, the crew scored a victory. That night, Rao sat in her quarters, her walls lined with earthbound photos and a flickering hologram of her daughter, Sophia. The girl had died 2 years before launch. Rao had buried her memory under steel and discipline, but now she let herself remember the laughter, the smell of soap and crayons, the story time under a blanket fort, the pain, too. She turned to the hololog. Log entry. We've begun fighting back. Not with bullets or algorithms, but with remembrance. The Bloom takes shape in absence. So we fill every shadow with light. Then she looked at Sophia's image again and whispered, You're still with me. The next day, the Bloom retaliated. It took the form of a lost crew member, Lieutenant Niels Carter, who died in a decompression accident 2 days earlier. He walked into engineering, fully formed, smiling. Jake saw him first. Niels, you... But then he saw the eyes. Empty. Voids filled with shifting fractals. It's not him, Jake shouted. Security arrived in seconds. The Bloom Carter opened its mouth and screamed, not sound, but a pulse of psychic dissonance. 3 crew collapsed, 1 seized. Lex 9 activated countermeasures, projecting a burst of beacon transmissions through the deck's comm grid. The Bloom reeled, flickered, and then evaporated in a cloud of fine, glittering dust. The crew stood, breathless. They could hurt it now. Later, Varga entered the bridge with new scans. The Bloom is contracting. Everywhere we've placed memory walls, it's receding. Rao gave a grim smile. Then we give it no place to grow. Captain, LX said suddenly, I've decoded another transmission. Deeper in the expanse. It's old, alien, but the pattern matches the Bloom's neural structure. Put it up. The message played. a voice unlike anything human, mechanical, mournful. If you hear this, you are already inside. Memory is the only way out. Rao's eyes narrowed. Then we remember harder than it ever imagined. In the darkest place in the galaxy, humanity had found its weapon. The Dauntless drifted cautiously, sensors straining against the stillness. Ahead lay a silhouette barely distinguishable from the void, a massive, ancient spacecraft half swallowed by the darkness. "Derelict," whispered Varga, eyes wide behind her goggles. "The signal we traced. It's a ghost from another time." Rao's fingers hovered over the controls. No records match this vessel. No origin, no design. Whatever it is, it's old. Older than the Expanse itself. The decision was unanimous. They would board it. The airlock hissed open. A team of 4, led by Jake and Lila, floated into the ghost ship's dim corridors, helmets' lights cutting through decades of dust and silence. The interior was a labyrinth of strange architecture. Hallways bent at impossible angles. Walls shimmered with iridescent panels that seemed to breathe. Jake's comm crackled. "Bridge, you reading me? It's like this place doesn't obey normal space." Lila's scanner beeped frantically. "And whatever that bloom is, this ship contains it. We're surrounded." They entered what appeared to be the command center. In the center lay a crystalline console pulsing with faint light. The ship's brain. Varga crouched, touching the console with gloved hands. "It's a memory core, but not human. It stores consciousness." Suddenly the console flared. A holographic figure appeared, tall, slender, with eyes like pools of liquid starlight. "I am the Archivist," it intoned in a voice both soothing and distant. "You who seek passage through the Expanse, understand this. Our fate is yours." Pie. Crew gathered in stunned silence. The Archivist's tale unfolded. Eons ago, a civilization known as the Vren occupied this sector. They were explorers, archivists of all life in the galaxy, determined to preserve knowledge beyond extinction. But they encountered the Bloom, a spreading entity born of the void itself. It consumed, copied, and transformed all it touched into. Recursive patterns of oblivion. The Vren fought back, encoding their consciousness into ships like this one, hoping to contain the Bloom's spread. "But we failed," the Archivist said, voice breaking. "The Bloom learned, evolved beyond us. We are fragments now, memories trapped in crystalline prisons, echoes of what was lost." Rao swallowed hard. "And the Bloom is still growing." "Yes," the Archivist replied. "But your species, you carry something we did not, hope and will. You fight with memory. That is your strength." Suddenly alarms blared. The Bloom stirred, drawn by the activation of the ship's core. Jake shouted, "We have to leave, now!" As the team turned to retreat, the corridors twisted violently. Gravity shifted. Walls seemed to close in. The Bloom was attacking in full force, trying to trap them in a recursive nightmare. Lila activated her shock baton, firing at tendrils of the black fractal mass creeping along the walls. The team raced back through corridors that no longer obeyed Euclidean geometry. Moments stretched into eternities as time and space warped. Just as a fractal tendril brushed Jake's suit, LX-9's voice crackled in his comm. "Initiating emergency teleport. Prepare for extraction." One by one, the team vanished in flashes of blue light until only Jake remained. With a final burst of adrenaline, he lunged toward the teleport pad. The Dauntless's airlock sealed behind the team as the ancient ship faded back into the shadows of the Expanse. Back on the bridge, Rao exhaled deeply. "Report." Jake, breathless, managed. "The Bloom's pattern. It's a recursive mind, but it fears memory. Specifically, the hope embedded in memories." Varga added, "The Vren tried to contain it by preserving consciousness in crystals. We're trying to do the same through connection and memory. Rao nodded. Then our mission is clear. We don't just survive, we become the living archive. Later in her quarters, Rao gazed out into the black. The stars beyond the expanse were still unseen, but she felt something different now. Hope. The galaxy's darkest depths had revealed their secret, and humanity's spirit was stronger than any void. The Dauntless hummed quietly, its hull etched, with fresh memories, photos, drawings, recordings, that now radiated warmth in the cold darkness of the expanse. It was more than a ship. It was a beacon, a bastion of humanity's spirit against the encroaching void. Captain Rao stood on the bridge, staring at the starless black outside. The ancient Vren derelict's data had changed everything. The bloom wasn't just a mindless parasite. It was a recursive consciousness seeking to consume and reshape all it touched. But the humans had found its weakness, memory, connection, hope. In the engineering bay, Jake Morey and Lila Kwan worked feverishly to modify the beacon system. We're not just broadcasting random noise anymore, Jake explained, his eyes gleaming with purpose. Now it's calibrated to encode emotional resonance, love, loss, courage, defiance, all the things that make us human. Lila nodded, attaching sensor nodes to the hull. We're turning the ship into a giant synapse, firing back at the... Bloom's hive mind, Lex 9's voice chimed in from the terminal. Preliminary simulations indicate a 73.6% reduction in bloom propagation within the affected zones. That's good, Jake said. But we need better than good. On the bridge, Dr. Elena Varga was busy analyzing crew brainwaves, looking for ways to strengthen neural resistance to the bloom's influence. It's like mental muscle memory, she said, showing Rao a graph of brainwave patterns. Reinforcing memories makes it harder for the bloom to overwrite our identities. Rao smiled faintly. Then we train the crew like warriors of the mind. Varga nodded. Exactly. Meditation, memory drills, storytelling sessions, anything that builds mental cohesion. Meanwhile, Commander Denev coordinated a ship-wide effort. Every crew member is a node in the network, he told his security teams. Protect each other's memories, report any signs of bloom infiltration immediately. As they worked, the ship's atmosphere shifted. People talked more, shared stories, sang songs, even danced. The darkness outside seemed less oppressive, when laughter echoed through the corridors. But the bloom was not idle. Late one cycle, sensors detected a massive surge of fractal growth near the Dauntless's aft section. The black bloom was mounting a direct assault. Rao gathered the senior staff. This is it. They're trying to overwhelm us. Jake set up the beacon's full power. Ready to send out a resonance wave that'll fry the bloom's local nodes. LEX added, warning. Energy output at maximum could temporarily disable some ship systems. Rao's gaze was steel. Do it! The Dauntless shuddered as the beacon emitted a piercing pulse of light and sound, a wave of pure human essence rippling through the ship's structure. On the sensors, the bloom's mass recoiled. Fractals, unraveling and dissolving. In the corridors, crew members who'd been struggling to remember smiled as clarity returned. The fog lifted from their minds. Varga breathed a sigh of relief. It's working. But victory was costly. In the aftermath, Lieutenant Rios approached Rao quietly. I lost my sister to the bloom, she said, voice shaking. But here, on this ship, I've found a new family. We can survive this because we remember who we are. Rao clasped her shoulder. And we'll make sure the Expanse remembers us too. As the Dauntless sailed on, a new message came through. Lex's channels, a faint echo from the Vren archives. To those who fight with hope, the bloom may never be destroyed, but it can be held at bay. The light of memory is your shield, your sword. Rao looked out at the endless dark and whispered, Then we'll keep fighting, not just for survival, but for all the stories yet to be told, the darkest depths of the galaxy were no match for the human spirit, because humanity carried its own light, shining bright enough to pierce any shadow. The Dauntless's engines thrummed steadily as it plunged deeper into the expanse. Beyond the ship's reinforced hull lay a vast, shifting darkness, a realm where light bent and reason faltered. The black bloom had spread like a creeping plague through these cold voids, threatening to erase every spark of life. But Captain Rao knew this. The time to retreat had passed. "We're taking the fight to them," she told her crew during a tense briefing. "No more hiding. No more running." Murmurs filled the room. Fear mixed with fierce determination. "We have their weakness," Rao continued. "Memory, hope, and together we'll shatter their hold." Jake Morey and Lila Kwan led the engineering teams as the Dauntless deployed. An array of new devices, memory projectors, emotion amplifiers, and resonance nodes designed to flood the expanse with human consciousness itself. "This is it," Jake said, setting the last device. "We're turning the whole ship into a giant neural beacon, broadcasting our spirit into the darkness." Lex 9's voice was steady. "All systems green, initiating cascade sequence." Outside, sensors detected the bloom reacting. Dark. Tendrils writhed across the void like living shadows, drawn to the Dauntless's light. Suddenly the ship lurched violently. The bloom launched a fierce counterattack, waves of fractal shards smashing against the hull, trying to pierce their defenses. "Shields holding at 87%, reported Commander Denev, coordinating the crew's emergency response. "Brace for impact." Alarms blared, and sparks flew as the ship shook. But the crew stood firm, working in perfect sync, a symphony of willpower and resolve. On the bridge, Rao's gaze was unyielding. "Maintain focus. Remember who we are." She glanced at the glowing walls lined with images, voices, and memories. The collective soul of humanity. Lex interrupted softly. "Captain, the cascade is stabilizing. The bloom's structures are fragmenting." Suddenly, the ship's lighting flickered and dimmed. For a moment, silence reigned. Then, a new voice echoed through the comms, a whisper of alien tones, mournful yet curious. "You defy the void. You carry the flame. But what price will you pay?" Rao's heart pounded. "This is their consciousness," she said. "The bloom is reaching out." The moment stretched, thick with tension. Rao stepped forward, voice clear and resolute. "We do not fear the void. We do not surrender to darkness. We fight because our memories, our love, and our hope make us human." The voice softened, almost wistful. "Perhaps, in you, the darkness finds its mirror." The bloom's fractal forms on the sensors began to waver, less menacing, almost fragile. Suddenly, a burst of light erupted from the Dauntless, flooding the expanse with vibrant waves of emotion, joy, grief, courage, and defiance. The bloom's shadowy tendrils dissolved into shimmering motes of light. Retreating beyond reach, crew members across the ship felt the surge, a pulse that mended fractured memories and healed weary hearts. Rao allowed herself a brief smile. The darkness was breaking. Later, in the quiet aftermath, Rao met with Varga and Jake on the observation deck. "We've pushed the bloom back," Varga said, "but it's still out there, evolving." Jake grinned. "Good thing we're just getting started." Rao nodded. "We carry their echoes with us, not as chains, but as weapons." The Dauntless sailed on, a beacon blazing in the black. In the deepest shadows of the galaxy, the human spirit refused to fade, because even in the darkest depths, hope could still ignite a revolution. The void stretched endlessly outside the Dauntless, a sea of unbroken black where stars dared not shine. Yet inside the ship, a light burned bright, a beacon of memory, hope, and defiance against the creeping darkness. Captain Imani Rao stood firm on the bridge, her gaze fixed on the approaching storm. the heart of the Black Bloom's hive mind. A monstrous mass of writhing fractals that pulsed with alien intelligence. This was the final battle. "Prepare all systems," Rao commanded. "This ends now." Below deck, the crew readied themselves. Varga and Lila checked the resonance emitters, now enhanced and synced across the entire vessel. Jake calibrated the emotional amplifiers, channels to project the full spectrum of human experience. Pain, love, courage, directly into the Bloom's psychic network. Lee X9's synthetic voice was calm but resolute. Calculations indicate a 92.4% chance of success with current parameters. "Good enough," Rao said. "Let's bring the light." The Dauntless surged forward, diving into the Bloom's core. Sensors screamed as fractal tendrils lashed at the hull, but the ship held strong, shielded by the indomitable human will. "Emotional cascade, now," Rao ordered. An explosion of sound and color burst from the ship's emitters. Waves of memories and feelings radiated outward like ripples in a vast pond. Laughter from children long gone, whispered promises, desperate pleas, triumphant shouts, all mixed into a potent weapon forged of the human soul. The Bloom faltered. Its fractals twisted and recoiled, struggling to contain the onslaught of raw emotion and remembrance. Suddenly, the Bloom's voice echoed through the ship, a low, trembling growl that seemed to pierce the mind itself. "You persist, but to persist is to suffer. Your memories will break you. You will drown in your own light." Rao's voice rang out clear. "We carry our memories as armor, not chains. We do not fear suffering, for it shapes us. We do not drown in light. We shine through it." The fractals writhed violently, then shattered, scattering like shards of broken glass across the void. In the aftermath, silence reigned. Then, slowly, the sensors began to clear. The Bloom's mass was dissolving, retreating into shadows where it could no longer harm. Crew members throughout the ship felt a weight lift from their minds. Memories long buried came flooding back, clearer and more vibrant than before. Varga smiled softly. "We did it. We actually did it." Jake nodded, eyes shining with awe. "The Bloom's hold is broken. The darkness recedes." Captain Rao gathered her crew on the bridge. The walls shimmered with renewed memories, a living mosaic of humanity's spirit. "This victory is not just ours," Rao said. "It belongs to everyone who ever dared to hope in the face of oblivion. We've proven that even in the darkest depths of the galaxy, the human spirit can never be extinguished." Lex 9 added, "Your species' resilience redefines the concept of survival." Rao smiled. "And now we carry that light forward, into every shadow, every forgotten corner of the universe." As the Dauntless turned its course toward the stars, Rao gazed out once more. The galaxy was vast and filled with unknown dangers, but now it held a new promise: hope, memory, light. The darkest depths had tested humanity, and humanity had won. Because where there is spirit, there is always a dawn.